that as well. That's just something that I think is important. As far as the Conservatives with regards to auto, I was here when Jim Flaherty said we don't pick winners or losers. And we had to fight like hell to get investment to save General Motors and to save Chrysler at that time. And that had done before. In fact, the Canadian government made money over it. The first time it actually came to support Chrysler during the economic recession of the 1980s, we actually had money on it. In fact, when we were done with the General Motors investment that we did, the government under Harper sold the shares short. And we lost money because of that. Had we held on to the shares, we would actually made more money for that. So I've been long after an auto policy in this place since I've started here. And we've gotten a little bit closer because some of the incentives that we're talking about here today are actually tied to actually manufacturing the products, and it's not going to the companies without actually having products deliverables. And that has been a shift that's changed. I also remember programs that the Conservatives put in place, like the Eco Auto Fee. People probably don't remember that one too much, but that was $110 million that they provided to the auto industry. And get this, it was to lower, it was give incentive to cars to have greater duration of time for their mileage. And so what they did, and we warned them of this, and they didn't believe us, they decided that they would allow the industry to do whatever it wanted with the car to kind of increase the mileage. So what happened was Toyota, with the Yaris, ended up getting around $96 million of $110 million because they took out the rear airbags to make the car to be able to go farther because it had less weight. So that was the Conservatives' auto policy at that time. They basically gave a direct subsidy to Toyota, who then later on went on to a number of different things that they didn't address, including the emissions issues, and also the Prius with regards to the policies around not even putting them accountable to the braking system, which actually was software all along, having to live through all the excuses that they provided and no follow-up from the government on it being like Canadian mats that were put in the cars being responsible for the deaths and crashes of people. And again, I want to note that I'm kind of surprised that we don't have an Ontario Conservative here, because I also see this as a part of their internal problems with regards to attack on Doug Ford and his government. So Doug Ford and his government is contributing to the Oakville plant $500 million. In the Stellantis plant, they're at $500 million. The General Motors plant, they're at $259 million. And to the Honda plant, they're into $131.6 million. And to the Umicore plant, this one doesn't have a horn on the end of it, I suppose. They're into money into that as well, too. And so that's the summary of the Ontario commitment. So I'm kind of surprised that we wouldn't have an Ontario MP from the Conservative Party raise this, because I know some have toured some of the battery plants that they've actually been criticizing. They've actually sometimes been at the announcements, but also, too, they went and toured over the summer. I was there when a Conservative member was touring a plant with me, which was good. And that's been helpful to kind of discuss some of the challenges that are here. So why there is an attack on Doug Ford, I don't know. I'll let the Conservatives sort that. We already know they have sore spots. And I can tell you I'm not happy with Doug Ford because, as Mr. Badaway would know, as I'm fighting hazardous material waste getting into my community. And so for me to come to the defense of Doug Ford in terms of their investments here is not what I would want to do, as I'm at the same time trying to stop hazardous material coming across in the Ambassador Bridge. In the province is trying to shirk that responsibility, and I'm trying to get the feds to deal with it, the province to deal with it. And so that tells you kind of where I'm at with this. With regards to, and this is what I am concerned, and Mr. Patzer did raise like an interesting thing that's taking place in the Stellantis plant. But here's what they're doing, though. They're actually contesting the agreements of the investment in Windsor, Ontario. And that becomes, if you look at the history, is because it was Bob White who broke away from the UAW. So we actually broke away. We were part of a United Auto Workers Alliance across North America, but because Canadian interests were always subverted, we broke away from that, and Bob White formed the CAW at that time. And the CAW is now Unifor. And so we have had to fight tooth and nail for these investments, including a product in Windsor, which is now being contested by the UAW, because they have their own agenda for American workers. We actually have Unifor for Canadian workers. And so when we start to open up these things here and having all the kinds of testimony in front of us here on that, that's going to get highly complicated as well, too. And we need to support our workers, not drag them under the undertow by accident, which is going to happen in this. And again, that's why we specifically, and if you're not familiar with Bob White, he's one of the biggest union representatives that Canada has ever had. And breaking away from an American union that was so powerful was very difficult to do. And it also came from the fact that we actually lost the Auto Pact, which I don't want to get into all here today, Mr. Chair. I don't think that's fair to kind of run down the Auto Pact. But the whole thing with the Auto Pact is it was a privileged trade agreement that was actually created that worked really well because we compromised on other things that we lost because we signed the free trade agreement. And I want to conclude by saying that the issue over Quebec in this, too, is important and not to be underestimated. We finally got Quebec back into being a major player in the future of automotive. That's huge. My father was an executive for Chrysler who worked under Yves Landry. And when we lost the Saint-Therese plant and we lost other plants across Quebec, it was a huge hit to manufacturing industrialization, not only in Quebec, but also Ontario. So getting Quebec back in the game on this is huge. So I would not want to compromise that right now because we have witnessed decade after decade of Quebec not having to get its share of where it really is very influential because of its automotive past and the aerospace issues